having the most important person in your life pass away and then diving straight into fame. I was so set in my ways of like, this is how it's going to go. The public loves this relationship. The public loves this life. Like, and I want to like keep the show going. And you would just slowly be like, how does Alexis feel today? All right, guys, welcome to Easy A, where we get you that easy A in life. I'm your host, Alexis Wren, and
I'm Allie Michelle.
So we were actually going to intro ourselves, but Allie came up with this really interesting idea where we write a very human-esque intro, aka roasting each other. So in a really loving way. So I'm going to go first. Okay. I'd love to introduce you to my sister, Allie Michelle. She looks 14 yet acts like she's 70. Her personality consists of a witch, a joker, and a queen. She knows your darkest shadows before you even say hi. She's psychic, but will deny it to her grave. She loves her friends more than anything. Her love language is space. So much space. She lives in her own fantasy world rather than in real life. She looks for the life lesson in every moment. Her magic of choice is words, and she uses them like a weapon. She has ridiculously amazing hair. She will study your text messages like she's a CIA agent, and if you put a period instead of a heart, she will think you hate her. She is the most sensitive person I know, and yet the strongest at the same time. She embraces every paradox, and she's only just getting started. Allie Michelle, everyone.
Wow. That was great.
Thanks.
You should feel proud.
Thanks. I wrote that in 2 seconds.
I wrote this at 1 a.m.
Okay.
Here we go. Alexis Wren is the most loyal friend you will ever have, but she will tell you if she hates your outfit. She will deliver life-changing wisdom in the form of roasting you. She not only makes all of her dreams come true, but will move heaven and earth to make her friends' dreams come true too. You might be intimidated when you first meet her, but you'll quickly discover that she's a marshmallow with the hugest heart. Oh, and always make sure she has coffee creamer in the fridge, or your day will go poorly.
Aw, thanks. It's true. It's true. I actually came home to 3 more of the coffee creamers. Thanks to my roommates. They're the best. So I guess we can just talk about our story. I feel like a lot of people have known us online for a really long time. I mean, some of our photos on Tumblr have gone like crazy viral, like way back in 2012.
The bathtub photos.
The bathtub photos. Yeah, that was, and we had Joni, her mom take photos of us, and those just went everywhere. Kind of miss those old days, but it's okay. So we'll just start there. I mean, you can start with how we met because it's a little ridiculous, but it gets better.
Okay, so we were 11 or 12, and your first boyfriend messaged me on Facebook and was flirting with me.
Boyfriend as in like we held hands and we had in a relationship on Facebook. It was an actual relationship. It was like, oh my God, we're dating.
But he was sending some questionable hearts and things. And so I messaged you and I was like, I just want to inform you that, this is happening. And then you guys broke up and we became best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first time we hung out was at the Century City Mall. Do you remember? You were in your little combat boots.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, you had your off-the-shoulder shirt. Oh, wait, no, that was at the flea market that one time.
It was like the flannel
And then
tied with the Uggs rolled down. Yep.
Ew.
But you lived in Culver City and I was in Calabasas. And so our moms had to drive like 2 hours to get us to see each other. We put so much effort into this friendship. I feel like nothing about our friendship has been easy, actually.
Nothing. And what cracks me up the most just about that whole history is because it took so much effort for us to become best friends. When we would get into arguments, our parents would be like, no, we've put too much into this friendship. We have driven around the country 2 times for you guys in the last year. Like, you're going to get through this. And they would sit us down. And Allie, I was a very abrasive, in arguments, I'm very abrasive. And I like to say me? I'm the healed version of this. But in my wounded era, I needed to deal with it right now, right then and there. Otherwise, like, I felt almost like I was suffocating. I just needed to speak words where you needed that time and space to think it through and actually feel it. So we would have really intense arguments because I wanted to bring something out of her and she just needed space to figure out what was inside of her. So that was kind of like our main lessons growing up. And we've really learned how to communicate and have a really healthy relationship. Like you're the basis of all my relationships, I would say for sure.
Definitely. And I think your mom was such a huge part of that too. Because, I mean, to your point, it took like 10 to 14 business days for me to feel things.
Yeah, it did.
It's a little delayed reaction.
If that.
But I just remember Cynthia sitting in the middle of us and being like, okay, now it's your turn. Okay, now it's your turn. Like, don't think about what you're going to say while the other person's talking. And she was kind of the first one that actually taught us how to communicate.
Yeah. No, she really did. And then Joni as well. And I still remember like how her mom, Joni, her whole life changed when she met my mom. My mom was the type of person that just being around her, you would evolve. Like you had no other choice but to evolve. And so she just affected so many people. And there was a period when the relationship was really cemented, was when we actually didn't talk for, I want to say 6 months or something. And then I called you on Mother's Day and I was like, my mom's sick. You were the first person, like we hadn't talked in a while, but you were the first person I wanted to call when my mom was admitted to the hospital. And after that, it was like, there was just this unspoken just commitment we have to each other. And going through those 8 months with mom getting sick, her passing, and then Joni, your mom, coming into our family and our lives and basically adopting me and my sisters and raising us, teaching me about taxes because I was making money at such a young age. I started modeling at 13. And so, I didn't know how to manage money. My mom didn't know how to manage money either, if I'm going to call her out. But Joni did. Like that was her grounded presence in her own family. So she adopted me. I actually lived with you as well. So that like just cemented the relationship as family as opposed to friends. And when I say we're sisters, I mean we're sisters in all aspects of that. Like, I'm not saying that to be like, oh, we just are so close. We're like sisters. It's like, no, we're fucking sisters because we will always be here for each other no matter how much we want to rip each other's heads off. And that's what I think family is.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my favorite thing about us is we've taken very, very different paths that have woven in and out, but we've never tried to change each other. Yeah. And so that's like my greatest example of a healthy love in my life.
It's true. And then whenever we did feel like our paths were going in different directions, we never held each other accountable for like staying in touch or just doing things that are on paper, what a good friendship is. We just let each other, there was no sense of ownership with each other. And whether I would go off with one of my boyfriends or you would go off on your yoga retreats. Come on, like, let's be honest here. Honesty is policy in this space. But yeah, so we always just came back to each other. And every time something would fall apart or come together, you were the first person I wanted to call. And so eventually, about 6 years ago, I still remember this night because it cracks me up. We were at that tattoo shop and I was like, I'm going to get your name. And you were like, what? And I was like, and I want you to write it. And she was like, what? She's horrible handwriting. Keep in mind,
like actually the worst handwriting for a writer. It's
she
awful.
Spent an hour going and writing her name like 1,000 times on this paper.
I think there's like 100 of them by the end of it.
Yeah, 100 of them. And then I got to go and decide which ones. And so it's on my hand right now. It looks beautiful. She did great. Cursive. But for me, that was probably like the easiest thing I've ever done. That was like, well, sure thing. Like, mom's not here anymore. You're literally the only constant thing in my life. And so, yeah. And then we got matching tattoos as well. We have our Saturns behind her. Yeah, our little planets behind the ear. We did Saturn because any other planet just looks like a ball. So we were like, we have to do Saturn.
When people are like, what does that mean?
Yeah,
does that have some crazy meaning? I'm like, I just didn't want a ball behind my ear.
It doesn't make sense to have a ball.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then you being into traditional schooling was really interesting because I can only come over on weekends and I would literally my mom would drop me off like Thursday night or Friday and I would spend all weekend, even if she wasn't she would be asleep for half that weekend, keep in mind. And I would still just be there eating her cereal. So that was also interesting too, because at the time being homeschooled, I was like so excited to be around someone who had that the high school upbringing
Access
and
to all the
access
parties.
to the parties.
You're like, we're going to these parties. I'm like, I've never been to one of these
I would
parties.
look
I
on
do
your
not want to
Facebook
go.
and I'm like, we got invited to this party. And you're like, oh no. And I'm like, oh yes. And I would dress us and put us in makeup. And
I remember so specifically, I had like braces and a unibrow and always my face in a book. And over summer, you like waxed my eyebrows, did the whole like Regina George, Mean Girls thing.
That was fun.
And I came back and like 8 boys liked me all of a sudden. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Is this what it's like to be a girl?
Little weapon.
I
know. Do they not want us to know that that's not shallow, but just a weapon of mass destruction? I mean, wars have been started over females' beauty, but we won't go into that. That's for another episode.
Time. Yeah, but I do want to get into the timeline because it's a pretty wild story. Like your mom passed away and then pretty much 6 months later, you were on the news, like on Instagram. And that's so disorienting to like lose the gravity of your life.
My mom like went to heaven and was like, I'll take that script. This is what's going to happen here. So that's what she did. I mean, it was, looking back, I can now see all of the dots and how it connects. But at that time, I had no idea what was happening. I mean, none of us did when social media was just coming up and that first wave was happening. But I do think having someone, I mean, the most important person in your life, a parent, pass away and then diving straight into fame, it was, did we keep in touch for that time? I feel like
No, we did. You guys would go off and travel a lot and then you'd come back. And because we lived in the same apartment building.
Oh, yeah. And then I would literally die on her bed.
You would like fall apart and then I'd kind of stitch you back up. And then you'd go off on a trip and come back. And that was kind of our thing for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, what was the best though, is you never, no matter how broken I came back from those trips, I was exhausted from traveling. I didn't have real connection to the people I was with. I felt really drained. I felt like I couldn't be myself. Therefore, my body was just rejecting every scenario. And I was just literally getting sick every couple of months while traveling. She never forced her opinion on me. She would just be like, here's an honest question. Let's answer it together. And I just think that was so profound, because if you wouldn't have done that, because I was so set in my ways of like, this is how it's going to go. The public loves this relationship. The public loves this life. Like, I want to make this happen. I want to like keep the show going. And you would just slowly be like, how does Alexis feel today? How does Alexis feel last week? And I would slowly start to get more honest answers out of myself. But there was no accusations. You never like pushed me. So that was also something I think our relationship just really cemented, because there was no judgments whatsoever. And even when I was like sick for like a month, you were just like, this usually when we're sick, our body's telling us something, and would go through like almost the way my mom would do that. She would just slowly have a honest conversation with me as opposed to an accusation. So that was huge. But I also want to talk about your traditional schooling and the upbringing of that, because I mean that poor thing. It's been a lot, wasn't it?
That was a wild time. Yeah. No, I think it was interesting watching you be homeschooled, and there were also certain social programs that you just didn't have. Like, they needed to be polite or do small talk. You just skipped those steps. And I thought that was so cool, because you were just yourself no matter what the situation was. But yeah, I was always really sensitive. And then I was put on Adderall when I was 9. And so that just totally wiped out my connection to myself. And I did great in school once I did that. But yeah, it was like my light went out. And your mom and dancing, those were the 2 major catalysts that brought me back and helped me turn that light on again. And then once I felt that connection to myself, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to college. Like, sorry, Dad.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm going to do a yoga training and a craniosacral training and a meditation training. And I'm just going to do all the trainings while you go travel the world. Yeah. But it was interesting. I mean, I'm grateful for that experience, because I really value being connected to myself and being able to feel my emotions in real time, because that was part of why it was so delayed, is like that disassociative nature. So
yeah. No, I remember you. And so many people mistook that as calm and put together, when in actuality, like, the more we got to know Allie, the more I was like, oh, this is actually,
you're losing your shit under.
Yeah, like you're actually not calm. You're one of the most stressed people I've ever met, but it's through this like mask of calm demeanor that has always impressed me, sometimes concerned me. It varies on different levels, but it was just really cool to see you. You know what? You remember that one time when we had that argument on the beach and you actually like yelled at me for the first time and splashed water in my face
And
we
then
like
pushed me into the waves. Yeah.
I was laughing while I was doing it because I was just so happy that you were like,
that I had an
you
emotion.
were present. Yeah, you were like there for that argument. Like I remember that being the launch pad for it because by the end of it we were laughing. But we were saying everything we were saying, we meant it because we were like, you just don't do this and that. And I don't remember. Do you remember? She has the most insane memory I've ever. She's my other brain in the sense where I can't remember things and she remembers all of it. So what were we arguing about?
We don't have to go there.
Okay. We don't have to go there.
Yeah. No, I think that's one thing that you do so well is in our arguments too. You're like, you can yell, you can cry. Like, I just want an honest moment out of you. And so that was a huge healing process because you take up all the space, like in whatever honest way you need. And as someone who contracts, it's like that was a really important relationship for me to have.
Yeah. Well, and in return, like I was so intense and every time, I mean, to be honest with you, anytime I didn't get my way when I was a little kid, I would throw tantrums and it was just my way of just being like, I don't feel loved. I'm whatever. And so you were the launch pad for my softness. And so we really were like yin and yang coming together and bridging our weaknesses and strengths and just creating this like duo that is now what we have. And so, I mean, it's interesting because yes, my mom had so much of the wisdom already. And she basically trained me from a very young age. We would go on super long car rides because I was homeschooled. And so my sisters would go horseback riding like 2 hours away from my home. And so we would go on these car rides and she would put on The Secret. She would like talk about the law of attraction, like super, super young. She'd talk about the universe and manifestation. And I had this crazy experience once where she was like, I want you to try and manifest something for the first time. And so I was like, okay, I want it to be a ball or anything, a ball. And so it was this ball and I visualized it. I was so excited. She just kind of walked me through what it is to manifest. And then 6 weeks later, I found it at the park. And that was just such a huge, just like, that was the starting point of, I guess you could call it the spiritual journey, the spirit journey. But when she passed, all of that stuff got blocked out because that type of a trauma is like, you just forget everything before that. And then Allie was really the one who opened me up again to all of the wisdom I already had, but it reminded me so much of her that I couldn't access anymore because it was painful. So that was like huge because as you grew in your own journey during that time with all of your trainings, I mean, this girl has so many certifications. It was great. It was amazing. And she was like, I went on this retreat. We didn't speak for 12 days in darkness. I'm like, okay, did we need to do that?
Yes,
what did you learn?
To sit with myself, which is a valuable skill, let me say.
I have not mastered that yet. I'm just kidding. No. Yes, I am.
No, you're not. You're not.
No, I'm not. Yes, I am.
No, it's fine. No, but I think that was, I feel like I went off kind of more into that spiritual world with all of the trainings and stuff like that. And you were very much mastering the material world. And so we had this funny agreement of like, I'll be in charge of our insides, you be in charge of our outsides, because without that, it's like I really struggled to just be here and accept this is the way Earth is. It doesn't matter how spiritual you are. You still have to like pass the salt and do laundry and taxes. It is what it is. And it's all part of it. And so, you know, you were always so grounding for me. Like, I think our joke about you being my dad and me being your mom is so accurate.
It's so accurate. I'm always the boyfriend in the situation. Yeah. I'm her boyfriend.
When we're traveling, she's like, the gate's this way. Come on, let's go.
Carrying her bags, just like doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
No, that part was so important for me. And then through that, we just like created what it is now, this undying friendship. Like, I know no matter what, you will always be in my life. And there's something so humbling about that, because when I mistreat you in any way, it almost feels worse because I'm like, she'll never it will always be okay. And so when I react, or because I can, I think it's more that like I react because I can, because I know you're going to be here. And then after that happens, I'm aware that I was aware that you would stay. And that's why I abused you, or that's why I reacted in that way. And then it just becomes this really good little lesson. And then Allie goes, do you want to talk about it? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, we should probably talk about this so we can move forward. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. And then she's like, okay. So it's very
so in Lilo and Stitch when she's like, I'm sorry I bit you and pulled your hair and punched you in the face. Like that is always you. But yeah, we went off on those like separate paths, and then we didn't really come back together until Hawaii with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. That was huge because I mean, no one knew it was going to happen with World. We were like, we should get on a flight to be with each other because the airlines might close. Like, we don't know what's happening. Everyone's grabbing toilet paper. We're scared.
That was weird
instinct.
It's really weird. Like, why was that the instinct?
I know.
Yeah.
So I was filming a movie in Oklahoma and
with Kevin, right?
Yeah, with Kevin. And then where were you?
I was living in Hawaii.
No, before that, you were on a trip. You went to
we were in the Dominican Republic. I remember they were trying to teach me how to ride a bike. And then like right after they're like, there's one more flight. You guys have to go.
Yeah. It was like, go. And then we ended up meeting on the same flight back to Hawaii. And then that was where like we rekindled everything because I was going through a really intense heartbreak. Just feeling like I've already lost. There's something really riveting and actually amazing about rock bottom because it's the one time in my life where I'm like, there's nothing left. And within that, there's this freedom. I love that moment. So I was in that moment. I didn't love it at the time, but I was just completely surrendered. I felt like I had nothing to offer. I felt I was in a really dark place. I hadn't been around nature because we were filming this movie and I was kind of in a trailer. And you were like, it's time. I remember you said it. You said, it's time to come home. And I knew you meant you, not Hawaii. And so as soon as we got back, I think at that time too, you had really started to become in tune with, I don't want to say abilities, but she has a very healing, powerful energy. Yes, I will say abilities. And then you started to just call me out. Like you would hold my feet and be like, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. And I always thought that was one of the most powerful things because everything you said was on point to a T. And instead of me moping around, you forced me to feel the darkest parts of that heartbreak. And within 3 or 4 months, I was on the other side of it completely. And I was able to even have a conversation with my ex. I don't know if you remember that. And then just really feeling the non-attachment to it because I loved honestly. And that's what you always told me. You were like, you gave it your all. So there's no regrets, period. Like as long as you loved honestly, you've never, like someone who's loved honestly can never truly lose. And that was huge for me. And we were just going through all of these immense changes during Hawaii. I mean, I'm sure in your end, you don't want to go too much into it, but there was a lot of changes happening.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting scenario because there were no tourists on the island. It was completely empty. And then it's like 15 people living on the same street. So this really tight-knit community. And Hawaii's different. It's not like in a city where you can ghost someone or just not see them again. Like you immediately see the ripple effects. If you get in a fight with someone, you're seeing them at the grocery store 2 minutes later. So there's just a level of accountability to your own behavior that you learn there, as well as that connection to the earth. Like you can't bend things to your will. It's in pace with the island, which is so slow. It's like a turtle.
I know. And then us being raised in Los Angeles, we've never experienced that because you can basically say, fuck you and never see you again. That is genuinely how you can act in LA. And it's so easy to just disregard someone and never take accountability for your actions. So that Hawaii taught me that was like, you just continually have to show up with the issue. And then you get really annoyed because you're like, I know at the end of the day that they're just a reflection and I'm just learning. But then, I think there's levels to it too. What you could be learning too is boundaries. It's not just like, what were we saying about when someone triggers you? I thought that was really profound. We were talking about that like a couple weeks ago. When someone really triggers you, it's not that it's not that they're bringing up something that's wounded in you. It's that they're bringing up something that you've pretty much almost healed. And so that's why it's really triggering, because you're like, I just got out of that. And so you're seeing it like in your face. And I love that too, because especially during Hawaii, we were just confronted with so many relationships that felt like just so much chaos all the time. And I was like, what is going on? Like, why couldn't we create calmness? I mean, we're on this beautiful island, you know.
Why is it like Lord of the Flies?
Yeah. No, literally. And I was just like, what was that? But that lesson, that was a great lesson, because I didn't feel so attached to needing to resolve it. I was like, oh, it's just information. It's not necessarily something I have to heal or I have to fix. And from there, that's when I think you and me started to kind of like detach from that scenario and be like, okay, maybe this isn't for us. And then I met, we'll call him R, and
You met R.
I met R,
our sweet alien.
And we went back to LA, and then you stayed there for a little bit longer, I believe.
Yeah, I stayed there for longer because I'll hold on till the rails fall off. And then
I remember she was like, should I stay? And I was like, no. And she was like, okay, I'm still going to stay though. And I was like, okay, that's fine, as long as you know my opinion on this.
No, but I do think that's another example of, even if we're looking at the other choices and we're like, okay, you're just heading into the lion's den, it's like not trying to fix it or control the other person is such a huge part of why our relationship is great. It just, we always give each other a soft place to land.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
Always. You're like, should I stay with him? And I was like,
okay, we don't have to go into this. Moving on swiftly. Anywho, but you are someone who's experienced a lot of grief, whether that's your mom or heartbreak, or just even, I feel like, growing up so fast. Like your first check, you bought your mom a dishwasher.
yeah.
You know, and so I feel like there's a lot of grief there. What are some of the main things that you've learned from that, and how have you handled and processed it? Because I think that would cripple most people.
I mean, I know that people think that disassociation is quote unquote a bad thing, but I think it's like our brain keeping us alive, trying to help us survive. So actually that disassociation from all that trauma really helped for a while, because I was able to just go forward and not feel like grief is not linear whatsoever. It doesn't get really, really bad and then you slowly get better. It's like, I remember the day my mom died, I called you and I was like, can we go shopping?
I do remember that. We went to All Saints. Yeah.
I bought a leather jacket.
You bought a lot of things.
I bought a lot of things. And not saying that was the correct approach. I'm just saying there's no such thing as like grieving properly, literally none. And I think when I took that lens off, because I think for a while I was trying to figure out the most, advanced and mature and spiritually advanced level of, healing. And I was just like, this is just going to be messy for a very long time. And sometimes I'm going to feel like I'm on top of the world. And sometimes I'm going to be crying one day and I won't even connect it to my mom, but it will be about my mom. And I just don't even know. And it's just the feelings that demand to be felt. And I think not attaching a story to it. I think today in our society, we are so obsessed with defining and just knowing what it is and having a name for this. And sometimes I feel like that's what's tripped us up so much, because to be alive is to just evolve and change constantly. So when you try to define something and put a label on it and then wrap it up in a box, you're not letting it evolve. And so when I stopped looking at my grief as something that I needed to define and give time to it and just let it be this like wild lion that just came out whenever it needed to. But that, of course, depends on the relationships, right? Like for a while, I really didn't feel safe in my relationships to feel my trauma. And so it would manifest in like physical illness, or like when I had, when I wasn't eating properly and I wasn't giving my body the right nutrients, like it would just, when I couldn't, the body is crazy advanced in that way. Cause it's like when I didn't speak my truth, I couldn't go to the bathroom. Like there was like things that would just match up. And in my heart, I knew it because my mom had always taught me those types of things. She was like, your body is the first to know. And then through that, your heart, your brain will figure it out. But your body is always, when your body's acting, it's because emotionally there's something going on, or there's a story you're telling yourself and whatever. So because I felt like for a while, the relationships in my life felt very chaotic. and I felt like I couldn't get a break. And you were the only person in my life that felt very calm and stable. And once again, you never like held me to the relationship. You were like, I don't know if this person's a good friend for you, but keep going. Like, let's see what happens. And then just naturally I would evolve out of those friendships. And then having you as the example, I started to finally attract people who are just at a place where I would like to be, or matches me, or just we have a connection from a grounded heart place, as opposed to just wounds bonding. So that was huge, because then through that, I was like, okay, now I can heal. Like I remember 2000, I'd just been called for Dancing with the Stars. We were both in Hawaii. We were living together. We've lived in Hawaii a lot together. We were living in Hawaii together, and I was really, I didn't want to say yes, just because I remember us talking about this so deeply in Hawaii, how the why and the story is like the whole, when I tell my life story, I want everything to be like interconnected and everything to have a reason and a why and like a deeper purpose. Because you can feel that even if you don't know someone's why, when they have a deep intention, when they have a deep why, you can just feel it in their soul. And so when I was talking to you about Dancing with the Stars, I was like, I don't know why I would go on, like, why would I go on this show? And I remember you were like, it's Mom's favorite show.
Yeah.
And I was like, she was like, you used to watch that every Monday night with Mom. And I was like, oh my God.
She would come in her like little ballroom outfit and her heels.
My mom loved ballroom dancing.
Yeah.
Every Thursday and Tuesday, she would go ballroom dancing. And so I was like, that's it. That's my why. And so it's crazy how our time in Hawaii, even back in 2018, 2017, that was like crazy healing for both of us. I don't know, what are some memories you have of that time?
You know what? I remember, actually, this is the best Christmas I've ever had. Do you remember at the Smith's house when we all dressed up in costumes?
Yeah.
And you and Joni were staying together? That was so fun, because I grew up with such a dysfunctional family, and they were such a whole together big family that everyone in the neighborhood would come over to. And I just remember all of us dancing, and I felt on such a primal level, like everything's going to be okay. And I think that's the power of community, is like when your primal needs are met of love and belonging, it's like the rest of it, just the weight lifts. So I think that was a huge piece that I got from there. And also just slow living.
Yeah.
It's like, where are you trying to get to? Don't be in such a rush to figure out who you are.
That this week. Jesus Christ. That was something we've had to unlearn a lot. I think everyone in society, that would be the goal for me, a society that people don't have to unlearn and then to relearn. It's just, they can just learn correctly. But we had to unlearn all of that. We still have it deeply implemented in us, but we look at it from a healthy perspective of that goal, career oriented mindset. But because of our experience with my mom and then our community in Hawaii, we were able to bring intention to everything. That's what's so cool about even this podcast. Like, we've been talking about doing a podcast for a year now, like a year more a year. It's been in our hearts for a long time, because it made sense. Like it's the perfect storyline for this friendship, and it's exactly the type of format that we enjoy. These are the types of conversations we have every day. And so even though, like, yes, this is like a career oriented goal, it's coming from like a really deep rooted, like grounded place of, we want to share, like, we truly think our friendship is valuable on a level of like lessons and learning. And so we want to share it with everyone else. Just this amazing, unique, funny, ridiculous relationship. Obviously, this is the first episode, so we're all prim and proper right now, but we'll get
Ish. I don't know. Yeah. I think too, it's really healing for us, because we, got social media followings at 16. That's so young.
Yeah.
Like, your sense of self-worth is just not there. Your brain's not fully developed.
For another 10 years, our brains just fully developed.
Just now. I was
like, why do I feel so peaceful this year?
Right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not spiraling every day.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I think it's also really healing for us to do long form content and not just this like fast food thing. That's something both of us have focused on a lot since moving back from Hawaii, is just long-term mastery over instant gratification and finding what we want to devote ourselves to. So, yeah.
And it's interesting too, because like where my strengths are, your weaknesses are. And so we've like mended also, and just like even collaboration in the sense of our career goals, you know. There's just been a lot of things that I wouldn't have tried if it wasn't for Allie, and vice versa.
Like what?
I mean, Poetry Lounge, that was something that was really cool.
Yeah, that was
And
sweet.
I mean, even I know originally we went to Hawaii when we were 17. That was like our first time. Remember, all the way back there.
Yeah.
But like you were the one that really was like, this is a place for healing for us. This is a place we're going to go to. This bitch wanted to retire and move to an island with no electricity at literally 17. And there was a time when I actually flew to Hawaii. She was there for like 3 or 4 years. And I was like, you need to, you're not done.
You
like,
can't stare at a leaf all day.
Started.
God, but you know what my dad told me? We were on the phone last night. He's like, when you were 8, we went to Maui and you said, Dad, I'm going to come back and live here. And he was like, sure you will. And then there we go. So he was like, everything you say you're going to do, you do. And I was like, that's so sweet.
That's also something too, is we keep each other super accountable for our accomplishments. I mean, it's crazy to say that you finished your fantasy book. Like that's, to me,
with your character.
With my character. That was really fun. That was really why I read it. I was like, how does she see
You call me, you're
me?
like, when does she enter? I'm like, chapter 9. Can you not skip just to read about yourself, please?
Anyway, so that was really cool because I knew Allie has always lived in her fantasy world as opposed to like real life.
Okay.
But just reading it and actually literally reading the life, the worlds, the universes that you've created, that's when I was like, oh, I get it now. Like I actually get, your brain just goes on these different, literally goes into these different worlds. And I'm just thinking about what I want for lunch. I'm just kidding. But to a degree, it is really special how you have been able to write a story that includes all of your favorite people in your life. And then immortalize us. So that was like the coolest thing ever. I still remember when she brought me my own little copy of the book. It's not little. It's 500 pages.
Yep. I used Fred's printer because I didn't want to go to Kinko's. And so we were just waiting for 3 hours for your copy to print.
Yeah. And it was in a little pink back box thing. And it had my name. It was amazing. I read that in a week, I would say.
And that was your first fantasy book you really read, right? Before.
Oh my God.
Yeah, now you're on a rabbit hole.
Oh my God.
I turn all the girlies on fantasy. I love it.
Oh my God, Sarah J. Maas. I swear to God. You're keeping me sane. Thank you so much. But yeah, so I mean, I think that's also something that I really respected about you is even from that young age, you were living in a fantasy world. Like there was no, when did you get me into her? I forgot.
This year.
Yeah, this year. But like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
I've gone through all 7 books. I'm an Audible girl. Yeah, for all the people that read Audible and clean their house and drive. That's me. And then you, like, of course, like to read. But that was cool. Because then I was like, oh, I understand what you're trying to do. Like this inspiration and just the world. But what I love about your writing that I think differentiates from everyone else that I've read, you add wisdom into it as if it's a self-help book almost, but through a fantasy world. And that to me was like, this has not been done on a grand scale, in my opinion. So that's why I got really excited for your writing. Because I was like, oh, this is where the poetry comes into play. This is where all her teachings come into play. Like she's using all of these characters to speak about different lessons and tools that she has. And that is, I mean, that's what I want for my kids, to be able to read and then also learn and evolve at the same time, but through world building. I know you busted it out in like 2 years, but how did that feel? Jesus Christ.
Like 3 years.
Okay, 3.
Well, because my dad lived in the Middle East for like a good chunk of my childhood, the only time I remember us really having together is him reading to me at night. Sorry, not reading to me at night, making a story up every night because I wouldn't let him repeat the same story because I was just an entitled child. I'm like, the audacity.
He would make it up every night.
He said that he would be at work stressing out, being like, oh my God, what are these kids going to do in the Crystal Caves tonight? Which is so sweet.
Aww.
And so he would come home and he'd basically just tell a story in real time. And he's such a storyteller. He could tell a 3-hour story.
Made up?
Yeah. Like, so that's where really where my love of fantasy came from too. And writing that book, you know, part of it was when I got sick with COVID and I couldn't move for a couple months. And I was just like, okay, well, what would I want to leave behind?
Oh my God.
And so,
I'm so sorry.
No, it was so good for me though, because I was like, okay, what actually matters to me? What would I regret not doing? It's like I would regret not pulling a story out of me.
This is what I mean, you guys. She gets COVID and she's like, where's the lesson in this? How can I evolve from this? What do I want to leave behind? What's my legacy? Everyone else is just dying.
I couldn't lift my arm.
Yeah, that hit you bad. But that is when you really like started to prioritize
That's when I started doing like 8-hour-a-day sessions, and I scrapped the whole thing. So I had written a draft for 2 years, and then I got a 105 fever, and I like basically re-envisioned the whole plot with the same characters. And so I just started over, and that was a huge lesson for me of how devoted are you to this thing? Are you willing to completely let go of what you think it needs to be? And so part of it was like a love letter to my friends, and another part is, yeah, if I have a daughter someday, I want to leave something behind so that she has a blueprint, because no one gave me a freaking blueprint, you know? No one said, here's how you do life.
Yeah.
Like, I would have liked a map.
I know.
A clue, a riddle.
List.
Something.
A riddle would be cool.
That would be cool.
That's something that I wish we had with, just because, I mean, I was talking to Chad about this last night, but this idea, we're watching The Vampire Diaries right now.
I'm sorry. Can you say that a little louder?
We're watching The Vampire Diaries right now. It's because of her. And she's like, we have to rewatch it. So we're rewatching it. And one of the things in the show that I love is within the town that they live in, their family lineage goes back like 500 years. And so they have
roots
and history. And Elaine is like discovering everything about her family, given it's about vampires. But take that away. That was something I kind of envied, because I was like, we don't really... I think a lot of people, specifically in LA, because we're all kind of just implants, we don't have that history or that roots. And that's something that I do wish I could speak to my mom about, because I didn't get a chance to talk to her as an adult to an adult. She was always kind of that on a pedestal mother figure. And I've had to kind of reconcile with that in my own way. I still write her in my journal and just, what would she say and who would she be? But I never really got to know her as a person. And then therefore I never got to ask about her family. And you know how as we become adults, stuff about our family just falls out of the
It just comes out. You're like, I don't remember
that
this.
Is not how I remember that.
There's always a conversation with a parent where they're like, you're old enough to know the truth.
Yeah. The truth.
The truth. Capital T.
T.
Yeah.
So we both kind of had a little bit of that, but not to that depth of like lineage and roots and, knowing your great, 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 whatever. So I do hope that maybe we can be the start of that in a sense. And I think like our careers and what we're doing and the reason that we started this podcast was just to capture who we are at this point in our lives, so we can look back and share it with our kids, share it with, it will always be documented. And I would do anything to be able to have something like this of my mom. And so it's like, this is the start of it, I guess, in a way, this is it. And then also just an opportunity to talk to people I've always wanted to talk to. Yeah. Oh, guys, we're going to have guests from all over. And we're just going to go like, every time we have a new guest on, you guys are going to be shocked.
Yeah.
But it'll be fun.
It'll be so fun. That was the benefit of the title. So it wasn't so niche. It's like, we can make all the friends we want.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
No, it's our excuse to just build upon this.
Yeah.
Well, this is just the first episode, which is actually insane, because I feel like we've been working on this for almost 2 years. The idea, the guests, we've had that guest list for over a year and a half now. And we just keep building upon it, which has been really cool. So yes, it will be around us and our relationship, because I think personally for me, my favorite types of podcasts are more conversational as opposed to interviewee. So that was kind of our goal with the podcast, was to just make sure that it just feels like you're just hanging out, just vibing with us, just having a good time. So that's how we want it to go. But we're very, very, very excited for some of our guests. We're having literally our closest friends, our best friends, people from all over different spaces, researchers, just people completely out of left field that we're having on. So I'm very, very excited to continue Easy A. This is the start.
It's just the start.
Just the start.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I remember R saying that always stuck with me is the people you love are there to make your life easier.
Mm-hmm.
And he does that so well. But I think too, with this podcast, like that's definitely the intention, is we just hope we bring a little levity and make your life a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe some giggles.
A few giggles.
I get a little brownie points. Every time I get a giggle, I'm like, check.
Yeah, I see. You're like, I won the Golden Globe.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the first episode of Easy A.
That's all, folks.
That's all. Oh, that has to be the ending.
Yeah.
That's all, folks.